Anyway, so today I want to talk to you about leadership styles in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and a little bit of key takeaways from the entire series, if you will. Is there anyone in here who has not seen like a single Marvel movie? Oh no! We're gonna have to educate you a little bit. I hope that you're not like entirely bored throughout this.
I mean, I don't know.
But I think,
I'm a DC.
is there anybody that has seen all of them? Okay, all right, cool. So you guys, the majority of you will be on board for this, so I think you'll get something from it. And even if you hadn't seen any, I think that you'll have some, key takeaways that you can take from the presentation. Anyway, so early theories of leadership, they kind of determined who was a leader based on their like military skill. Early on, they thought people that were leaders were like good fighters, right? Good military strategists. They were tall. They might have been like classically good looking, right? They were probably men, right? And they were probably spoke in a lower voice, right? Caitlin's heard a lot of this already. I think were you in my 3610 class when we did this? Yeah. So sorry if you have to sit through this again. Anyway, so Thor is like the perfect example of great man theory, right? Now we are a little more, I guess, educated and enlightened that you can be a leader and not be a great military leader, or classically handsome, or talk in a deep voice, or be a skilled fighter. There's more to leadership than that. But I thought that Thor was a great example of this great man kind of leadership theories that emerged early on when people first started studying leadership. And this all came about during the pandemic when I had nothing to do, and I was watching a lot of like Great British Bake Off kind of stuff, and when you have like a young person in your house, you're always looking for entertainment that you all can watch together. That's kind of interesting for everybody. And so my husband was like, we really should start the Marvel movies. I think you would like them, and I hadn't seen any of them at that point. And so we started chronologically, not as they were released, but as they were supposed to fit in the overall story. Does that make sense? So we found the list online, and we just went through them, and I just got hooked. And I never thought I would be this kind of person. I always made fun of my brother-in-law because he's like the biggest Star Wars, like Lord of the Rings fan you've ever met, and I would always call him a nerd and stuff. But now I'm the Marvel nerd in the family because there's so many interesting stories and interpersonal dynamics that go on in these things. And because I'm kind of like obsessed with leadership and interpersonal dynamics, there's so many cool things that go on in these movies. And I started to apply some of the things I learned in leadership in my master's and my PhD program, and I just saw them unfolding in the movies. And so I was like, this would be a great way to kind of like illustrate these different leadership styles and leadership theories, but in a way that's kind of iconic. Do you know what I mean when I say iconic? It's like a way, it's like a touch point, whether it be a symbol or something like that, where it's like, oh, that's this type of leadership, or that's this type of leadership. So that's kind of what, where I'm at and why I do this in some of my classes. All right, servant leadership. Have we heard of servant leadership? Have we talked about it in here yet? Did you guys get there yet? You might, I don't know. But a lot of these are just styles that have kind of merged in leadership research and in the literature. And it's not to say one style is better than any other, but they're just like common patterns of behavior that people see in different types of leaders, and you might see some of these in yourself as we talk about them. But the person that I put up for servant leadership, and you guys can feel free to disagree with me, those of you that have seen the whole Marvel canon, you can disagree with me if you want. But I thought that Fury was a great example of a servant leader. Servant leaders try to transcend self-interest to serve others, the organization, and society, but they still try to fulfill the needs of their followers while achieving that larger mission. And I feel like he's a good example of a servant leader because he tries to put all the right pieces into place, right? Get all the right people on his team to kind of save the world together. Would you agree with me? You don't have to. You don't have to. Those of you who have seen the movies, he's always trying to put he engages in a lot of like structure building, right? He puts the right people in place. He gives them the resources that they need, whether it be money or equipment, right? Or some sort of like leader in that group or whatever. But he doesn't always take credit for it, right? Servant leaders kind of like take a step back from the spotlight, right? And they let their followers take the glory and the credit for all that they've done. So that's why I chose Fury. And the thing I love about Fury is he's very sassy. right? He is like servant leadership. You think, oh, that's so nice and warm and fuzzy, but he's really sassy and he will mess you up, right? So that's one of the things that I like about Fury. But it's not about him, right? It's about his team, and it's about saving the world and saving other people. All right, so let's move on. I'm going to show you an example, if it works, of Fury in action, doing whatever it takes.
Just stay awake. Eyes on me. Not an option.
It's okay, boss. This was never gonna work if they didn't have something to.
Agent Colson is down.
The medical team is on its way to your location.
They're here. They called. These were in Phil Colson's jacket. Guess he never did get you to sign them. We're dead in the air. My communications, location of the cube, banner, door. I ain't got nothing for you. Lost my one good eye. You had that coming. Yes. We were going to build an arsenal with the Tesseract. I never put all my chips on that number though, because I was playing something even riskier. There was an idea. Stark knows this. Called the Avengers Initiative. The idea was to bring together a group of remarkable people, see if they could become something more. See if they could work together when we needed them to fight the battles that we never could. Phil Colson died still believing in that idea. Heroes. Well, it's an old-fashioned notion.
Okay. So what's funny about that, you've seen it, is he's basically guilting them into doing the right thing, right? And he's giving them tough love in service of the overall objective, right? Now you could argue. What'd you say?
It's like gaslighting the mess out of him.
Yeah, well, he did die, but those cards were not on his person, those cards were in his locker. And Fury had taken him out of the locker and wiped him in the blood to make it look, even more. So you could argue that it was a bit unethical, right, or a bit shady, but he knew that's what they needed to get a fire underneath them, right, to get them to act. So I think that's a funny example of leadership that might be a little questionable. Okay, so let's talk about Coulson. Let's go back to Coulson. So I'm mostly basing my assessment of Coulson on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which was a television show that was a spinoff of all the movies on ABC. And authentic leaders, at least the definition in the literature, says that they know themselves really well, they have high ethical values, they inspire others with their openness and their self-disclosure, kind of like not being afraid to say their strengths and weaknesses, which would probably be rooted in some humility. They are very respectful of other people's viewpoints, they encourage collaboration, and they try to help others learn, grow, and develop. And I feel like Coulson does that really well with his team of agents and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't have an example of that, but I wanted to share with you what I thought authentic leadership looked like. All right, another one is interactive leadership that comes up a lot. And this is people that are like really into building relationships, right? They are really excited to be a part of the team and to get to know everyone, right? And they don't sort of like influence their followers because of power. It's more about relationships, right? They get their power from the relationships that they build with others. And I chose Spider-Man and Ant-Man because they're so excited just to be there, right? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like so enamored by all the other people on the team, and they're really friendly people, and they're really good at kind of like building these collaborative relationships. They're caring, they're inclusive, and then they focus on building relationships in order to get power and influence. Would you guys agree with that? Would you think that's a fair assessment of interactive leadership, or my characters for those two? Awesome. Again, don't be afraid to disagree with me. All right, transformational leaders. This one is like a really popular one in leadership research, transformational, because it's all about when you transform, you change, right? You're trying to get from one condition or one state and move to a better condition or a better state, a better vision of the future. So transformational leaders bring about innovation and change by creating an inspiring vision, trying to shape the values of their followers, building relationships, and providing meaning. And I chose Black Panther, or T'Challa, because in the original Black Panther film, he's trying to get everybody to kind of open up Wakanda, right, and let other societies in. So far they've lived like a very isolated life from other countries and haven't really participated on the international stage, if you guys remember. And he's like, the world needs us, the world needs our technology and what we can provide it in terms of leadership. And he tries to encourage everyone in Wakanda to kind of make the sacrifices to put themselves out there and make the world better. I also kind of think that Fury is a transformational leader as well, because he has the vision of creating the Avengers Initiative to kind of protect the world. But I wanted a place to include Black Panther because he's such an interesting character, so I chose him for this one. Yeah.
You basically chose to use vision.
To use vision? I know, okay, there's like, so vision, okay. Y'all, I'm so geeking out, and thank you for indulging me, letting me talk about this stuff, because it's like, this is the weirdest interest ever. But vision, I kind of think is sort of servant, because he has this like sacrificialness about him, you know, at the end, where they take the stone and stuff, so servant leaders, you know, one of the most popular, I think, that comes up a lot in discussions is Jesus, right, as a servant leader, because he's all about his followers to the point of, like, sacrifice. So I might put vision in servant, too, but I'd have to think about it some more. Yeah, good point. All right, transactional. So transactional leadership is actually, like, the more managerial type of leadership, where it's focused on, like, giving people tasks and assignments, you know, following up with them, making sure they're meeting their goals and being productive, assigning consequences and rewards for their performance, giving them structure so that they can perform their jobs and they know what's expected of them. You know, we could get into a whole discussion about the difference between management and leadership, and I don't think we have time for that right now. But this is the type of leadership that relies more on a managerial kind of mindset. And I chose Maria and Black Widow because I feel like they're always there when things need support. Does that make sense? Like Maria Hill is Fury's go-to gal. She's, you know, always putting things in place as he orders them or as he needs them, kind of like his administrative assistant, you know? And then Black Widow, she kind of keeps the fires burning, keeps everybody in touch after the blip, right? So she's kind of like the administrative assistant as well of the Avengers when everybody's kind of misplaced. But they play like really important roles so that everybody stays coordinated, right? And everybody stays in touch. So that's what I chose for them. Do you agree with me? No? Yes? Maybe? Yeah. Black Widow too could also be because of her. Well, I don't want to spoil anything for those of you that haven't seen it yet. But she has a very kind of authentic approach and a servant style as well. But the whole point of this exercise is to kind of introduce you to different leadership styles and give you a way of remembering them, right? Yeah.
I think the way that leadership for all of the characters,
Mhm.
not just these specific, the way that leadership is presented throughout the arcs of these different stories
Yeah.
changes drastically.
Yeah.
Or even say Thor,
Uh-huh.
it changes from how he starts out to where it is later. His idea of what is worthy
Right.
changes. The idea of leadership to Captain America changes. The idea of leadership to each of these people changes
Yes.
drastically throughout the arcs of the stories.
Yes, I would agree. Based on the things that happen to them and the other characters that they interact with, they definitely have these growth arcs, right? Where they start out one way. And I think one of the best examples of that is Tony Stark's character.
Mhm.
Because he's all about making money and, you know, being flashy and awesome, the, you know, party boy kind of character. And then the things happen in New York and he starts to have anxiety, you know, and panic attacks, and he's like, I have to do something about what's happening to our planet. And he really becomes less self-focused and more kind of like task-focused and others-oriented. So I think he's a great example of like a
I think
big change.
Meeting Peter Parker is a huge part
Yes.
of Tony's
Yes.
overall leadership arc,
Yeah.
because, and his child obviously lived
Yeah,
3,000.
exactly, yeah.
For the first time in his, like, his father was like this rich conglomerate, and he taught him how to be a rich conglomerate, and like, he's this great celebrity, and I mean, he thrives on that. That's the only thing
Yeah.
that drives him. It's the only thing he knows.
Attention, yeah.
But once he has responsibility for Peter Parker and the child,
Mhm.
it creates empathy for the whole world.
Yeah.
He
yeah.
sees them in a way that he's never seen people before, and that makes him see people that way.
Yeah.
I'll be quiet though, I can
No,
talk.
no, no, you're absolutely right. I agree. His child was a big turning point for his character. And I think also kind of mentoring Peter Parker, which we're also gonna talk about in a second. And then here he is, charismatic leadership. You know, it could just be that I think that Robert Downey Jr. is nice. But his character definitely has charisma, right? He walks into the room and people take notice. He talks and people listen. He kind of has this sarcastic, presentation about himself, but he has a lot of good things to say behind that sarcasm. But charismatic leaders inspire and motivate people to transcend their expected performance, even to the point of personal sacrifice. So the Avengers and his team, they will follow Tony into some very dangerous situations, right? And charismatic leaders tend to do that, for better or for worse. There are some examples we have where that's not such a good thing, But this style is similar to transformative or transformational because they both provide a vision of what could be. But with charismatic leaders, followers are more willing to sacrifice for them, it seems like. And there's some really scary examples of these types of leaders in history. Can you think of one?
Nobody said one.
Every person in here knows who it is.
Everybody's
Nobody
thinking
wants
the
to-
same thing. And if you want to watch a really great show from that time in history, A Small Light on Amazon Prime is really good. And it's about Meep Geese is her name, and she helped hide Anne Frank's family. It's so good and so heart-wrenching. But yeah, the leader that we're all thinking about, he was a good speaker, right? He was a good speaker. People followed him for whatever reason, and it caused a lot of damage. So charismatic can be, is it just dawning on you who it is?
You should go watch that movie. You should know.
Yeah, so charismatic leadership can be dangerous, and we're going to talk about some reasons why in a second. All right, ethical leadership. Moral golden child, Captain America, right? He's a great one. I think he might be my second favorite Avengers character. My first is on my shirt. Do you know who it is?
Captain Marvel.
Captain Marvel, that's right. Power to the ladies. But ethical leadership is a style where moral awareness is kind of front and center, and they try to influence their followers to be morally aware and kind of look at every situation that they encounter with a more ethical kind of lens. Captain America is a great example of this. Like, they're all about showing respect, serving others, and it's all about justice. Doing the right thing is really important to Captain America, like in every situation. And he kind of gets himself in trouble sometimes because he'll be stubborn about it, and it kind of creates conflict at the Avengers team level. All right, so here's an example of him being ethical. I running short on time.
Look at that. He's making me cry.
I am looking for qualities beyond the physical.
Do you know how long it took to set up this project? All the grubbling I had to do in front of Senator What's-His-Name's committees?
Yes, I know. I'm well aware of your efforts.
Then throw me a bone. Hodge passed every test we gave him. He's big, he's fast, he obeys orders, he's a soldier.
He's a bully.
You don't win wars with niceness, Doctor. You win wars with guts. Grenade! Get away! Get back!
Is this a test?
He's still skinny.
I love that clip, so good. Okay, so the next type of leadership I want to talk to you about real quick is shared leadership. And this is a style where usually people that are really high in skill, high in expertise, probably have been working together for a while. They kind of like pass the leadership baton from time to time. And a great example of that, I think, is Guardians of the Galaxy, where they kind of, I mean, Peter wants to be the leader. Star-Lord, he wants to be in control, but he's really not, because he does kind of defer to other characters on the team to lead at certain times when it's something that they're really good at. But shared leadership is a leadership style that broadly distributes leadership responsibility among a team, and they lead each other at different times. Leadership comes from each member. More than one leader maximizes effectiveness because you trust those people to do what they need to do and in the right way. So trust is really important if you have a team that's going to engage in shared leadership, and it's probably not for people that are new to the world that they're in, right? Like, you don't want to give a ton of autonomy to people who are newbies and fresh at what they're doing. Okay, so here's an example of that real quick.
What's the story upstairs? The power surrounding the cube is impenetrable.
Thor's right, we gotta deal with these guys.
How do we do this?
As a team, I have unfinished business with Loki.
Yeah? Get in line.
Save it. Loki's gonna keep this fight focused on us, and that's what we need. Without him, these things could run wild. We got Stark up top. He's gonna need us.
So, this all seems horrible.
I've seen worse.
Sorry.
No, we could use a little worse.
Stark, we got him.
Banner,
Just like you said.
And tell him to suit up. I'm bringing the party to you.
I don't see how that's a party.
Dr. Banner. Now might be a really good time for you to get angry.
That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry.
Hold on.
Send the rest.
Guys?
Call it, Captain.
All right, listen up. Until we can close that portal, our priority is containment. Martin, I want you on that roof. Eyes on everything. Call out patterns and strays. Stark, you got the perimeter. Anything gets more than 3 blocks out, you turn it back or you turn it to ash.
Wanna give me a lift?
Right. try and bottleneck that portal. Slow him down. You got the lightning. Light the bastards up. You and me, we stay here on the ground. Keep the fighting here. And Hulk. Smash.
So that is a good example because Tony, he like passes the baton, you know, he's like, I'm bringing the party to you, and then he says, call it, Captain. So he's like, it's your turn to tell us what to do next, you know, so Captain gives them their orders. I'm like running over, but I want to just go really fast and tell you a little bit about dark leadership, which we saw part of there with Loki, right? So dark leadership is that flip side of leadership where you have people that are, they have certain traits about them. Usually it's called the dark triad, which includes narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. So I think all of these characters have a mix of those in different amounts. But it kind of influences their leadership style in a bad way. I definitely think he is Machiavellian because he's very much about manipulating people, right? And you never quite know whose side he's on. And I honestly think that Kang, have you guys seen a movie with Kang in it yet? I think he has like a mental disorder, maybe psychopathy, because he lacks empathy, right, for other people. And he's been looking at all these like timelines for years and years, and I think it's made him crazy. Okay, so dark leadership. So as I was thinking about doing this and putting it together for one of my classes, I was like, it would be really cool to put together like an innovative teaching paper that I could get published or maybe do a book. And I was friends with this guy on LinkedIn, and he posted this. He had already written a book about leadership in the MCU. He's at University of Louisiana Monroe, and I've contacted him and become friends with him, and I use this class, or use this book in a class. And now we're going to do a panel at Southern Management Association about using pop culture in management education. But I wanted to leave you with some of his key takeaways from the MCU films that he includes in his book. High impact teams are built on trust, right? We saw that in that clip, right? Where they all trusted each other to do what they were best at. Diversity in personality, background, and roles makes for more effective teams. When you have different perspectives, people are going to be better at problem solving, better at finding solutions, and more innovative and creative, and the research backs that up. We have to learn to like what our strengths are, and you guys have talked a lot about that in this class, about identifying what your superhero power is, right? What you're really good at, and put them to use. Sometimes we have to be able to share the spotlight with others, just in that example of shared leadership, and empower others to do what they're really good at. And we were talking about Peter Parker, and this is something I think people forget a lot when we talk about leadership, is succession planning. You guys heard of that? Succession planning? Because everybody's like here and now in the moment, we gotta get a little bit more future oriented, and we have to pick out those people that are part of the next generation that we can mentor and put them in the pipeline, you know, for those when it's time, right? And I think the Peter and Tony Stark relationship is a great example of that. Conflict can be useful, especially when it's task oriented. It actually makes us perform better as a group. But when it becomes personal, it can just get to the team level and just fester and make things really, really bad, right? And you see that in Civil War, the Captain America film. We also must find a way to deal with our stress. And these are from the book that I mentioned. As leaders, we can't let our stress impact our team negatively, so we have to find ways to take care of ourselves. And I thought Thor meditating was a great example of that. Being authentic and building self-awareness, learning about ourselves, helps us become our best as a leader. And we have to keep watch of the external environment and how it's going to impact our teams, and as leaders plan for that when it comes to like contingencies, succession planning, all those kinds of things. Just like the Avengers were kind of, you know, keeping watch for Thanos and what he was going to do. Leaders, we have to make sense of the world around us, and a lot of times we're tasked with helping the world make sense to our followers and to our teams, and providing that kind of meaning, right, and direction in sometimes a chaotic situation. Sometimes the best thing you can do for your team is consider how you can serve them, and the best leaders surround themselves with the best people. All right, I got through that. A little bit about 5 minutes over, but any questions, comments?